Tonight's thought. Things are getting so complicated these days that I feel I need to simplify. Right? We all need to simplify, honestly, but I really need to try it. I don't know about you, but I just feel like I need to start small. Maybe like start with this podcast, just simplify things, and not just maybe take the show back to like the basics, the early days of podcasting, but go beyond that. Go back to the basics of radio, right? Like people feel these days like they're too good for radio, right? Like it was too simple a form of entertainment. You turn the music on in the morning and music stops, you hear a DJ talking and all that, and they're like telling you goofy local interest stories and playing fart noises. And, you know, people just feel like they're too good for fart noises these days. And I say, like, we need to go back to that. Like, simplify, go back to the fart noises, make America make, you know, fart noises again. And, you know, I can do that on this show. I have a soundboard. Right, I'll give you an example, show you what I mean. So, you know, I tell stories on this show, so I'll tell you a story. So the other night I get a hanker on for, you know, a Coca-Cola, and I walk down the street to the Chevron, and I get my Coke and I stand in line, and, you know, there's my friend Buzz there working the counter. And I've known Buzz for so many years now that I've given him a nickname. I call him Chevron Buzz, right? And I see that he doesn't actually even notice that I walk in. He's really immersing himself in some activity. And I see him there at the counter behind the cash register under that week's mural of the Wall of Shame. You know, these would be like still photos taken from the closed circuit security system that they have in the store of people who have stolen things from the Chevron that week. And I'll admit that it's always kind of a form of entertainment to stand in line while you're waiting to be rung up and, you know, look at people that week who've like stolen alcohol and Ritz crackers and toilet paper, even though there is kind of something that's sad about that. I mean, you have to admit that, you know, public shaming is something that a very simple thing in this world that we all still participate in and kind of enjoy against our better defenses. But I digress. So I get up to the counter, and Buzz, I see that Chevron Buzz is what he's working on is he's drawing a sketch on a notepad there. And it's a really good sketch too. And it's a sketch of like an old hag, you know, like the stock character of the haggy old lady who's got like curlers in her hair and like a cigarette sticking out of her mouth. And, you know, like those tights that are all wrinkled up around the knee. And I tell Buzz, I was like, hey, man, that's really crummy. And he looks up and he's like, well, I'm not that good. And I said, no, I mean, it's like, you know, it looks like something that R. Crumb would have drawn. You know, he's like, oh, yeah, that's funny. And he asked me if I know who that is. And I say, well, it kind of looks like Vicki Lawrence from like the Mama's Family television show from the 80s. And he's like, oh, man, that's so close. He says, it's actually Miss Wiggins. And being several years away from Buzz in age, I'm not really familiar with the old Carol Burnett show. Like, I used to watch it when I was a kid, but I wasn't that big of a fan because it was several years before my time. And he says it's Miss Wiggins and all that. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'll have to go back and watch that on YouTube, right? And I say, you know, Buzz, that's really good. I've actually got an idea for you now that I know that you're a good drawer. You should actually sketch the wall of shame. Because it always makes me feel a little bit uneasy, I tell him, that every week, even though I kind of enjoy looking at these pictures of people who have stolen wine and things like that, you know, it always makes me feel a little guilty. And, you know, maybe you should just, instead of like giving us closed circuit security footage and pixelated grainy photographs that don't look that great all the time, maybe you should like sketch the people who stole things, right, from your store. And it would be like this nice little art project. It wouldn't fully shame people, but it would show people at least, kind of give them an idea of what they looked like and show them the items that they stole. And it would get people looking at it. And it would be like this quirky kind of neighborhood local merchant thing and all that. And he's like, you know, that's actually kind of a good idea. I'll do that. And it'll actually give me a way to, you know, show where people conceal things. You know, that's something we can't really, you know, show you on the in the pictures, but I can draw those. And I say, well, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, I'll give you an example. You know, last week there was a woman who came in here and, you know, she took a bottle of wine and she stuffed it up her. You know, I need some practice on the soundboard, but you kind of get the idea. Well, from Birmingham, Alabama, this is the Midnight Citizen Show. I'm your host, Mike Booty. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Yeah. This is first show back from like my 1 week hiatus. Hope you didn't miss me. And if you did, well, why are you still listening? I don't know. Yeah, but we are here in the studio. It's another Saturday night. I took last week off just because I did 4 shows in a row, 4 weeks in a row on Saturday, and I just kind of wanted to have the weekend off, and I think I'll kind of do that from here on out. I'll do like a series of several shows and take a week off and give you like a show from the archive or something. This is a show now that has been going on for, 12 years, off and on. But, you know, mostly more on than off, and I'm glad to report that. So, you know, it's just, it's a fun thing to do here on Saturday night, and I'm glad that you're here, even though you're watching sometime in the future, right? Yeah, I'm joking about, you know, using like the fart noises and the awoogas and all that. I feel like I am a little bit too good for that, but I will say that, you know, a few years ago when I discovered these free digital soundboards that you can get for your podcast, it was really eye-opening. And very exciting because as a guy who did grow up listening to radio and was very enamored with, these DJs who can be a little obnoxious, I'll be the first to admit that. I just always liked the idea that they had this whole studio at their disposal, this whole studio of like sound buttons. And of course, they all used to be on cart machines. You just imagine like the truck unloading at the radio station, and you've just got this big box of cart machines. It's nothing but like fart noises, right? Carts full of farts, and they load them into their cart players, and play them. But now everything's digitized, so all that fart, it's not taking up space. I'm saying that word way too much. The F word. Sorry. Right. Oh, what the hey? Let's play a fart noise just for old time's sake to send off old time radio and welcome in podcasting. Did I do that right? Yeah, there we go. There we go. And now it's fun. All you got to do is you just got to go like, think of the sound that you want and just go hunt it down on the internet and download it as an MP3, and it's there on your digital soundboard. And I use Jingle Palette personally, right? Totally free. There's some other ones out there, but yeah, it does. It makes you. I don't know if it I do a podcast that I do publish and I put it out in the world. So to me, it's very real, but I know that there's still a lot of critics out there of podcasters like me that just say, yeah, you're just doing fantasy camp, right? You're making like a radio show host. I don't know. Whatever. You know what I got to say to that? So I found this sound effect, right? That I wanted to get like, that old trope, that car engine sound that's like awooga, like you would, hit the hit the car horn and it would be like awooga, And I remember there was this scene in this movie Bushwhacked from like the mid-90s starring Daniel Stern, and he says it in that, because I guess it was like adopted by like nightclub comedians who did like sound effects, and so he would go like exactly. One of the things I love on Jingle Pal is you can kind of like mix it over and over again. You can do like it's like that, And you could also get some other I found some other good little sound effects there for my soundboard, my digital cart machine. In that same scene from the movie Bushwhacked, he's like demonstrating for all these campers that he's like kidnapped, but in a good way, and taken up into the mountains. I don't know. So he can hide out from federal agents. So he's teaching them about the birds and the bees with like Barbie dolls. So, he's like, that's not working. Okay. All right. Well, that one's out. That one's out too. So I just pressed a couple buttons and they didn't work. What the hell? My cart machine is all off. I don't know. What in the world? Okay, that one still works. As long as the fart button still works, I'm totally fine. Oh, God. So, yeah. 13 minutes into the show. I think this is going well. What do you think? Right? Oh. I need goofs. I need a good laugh right now. Yeah, but there's just so much craziness in the world that's been going on the last several years. And I just feel like right now it's kind of coming to a fever pitch. Especially, and I think like the thing that just really overfilled the glass a little bit for me this week, like the straw that broke the camel's back, or whatever you want to say, whatever metaphor you want to use for just a little bit too much, okay, is the weather here in Alabama, and I'm not going to spend the rest of the show talking about the weather, I promise you, but it's just been insane. Yesterday it was 70 degrees and it was actually like balmy outside. It was, I was like turning on the fans in the house. It was like actually a little bit muggy. And then it started raining around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then by 7 o'clock in the evening, it was snowing here in Birmingham, Alabama. And I I may be wrong, but I feel like this is actually the most snowfall that we've had in March since I was in the 4th grade in 1993. You we had a whole like 1/4 inch accumulation in some areas. I mean, that's just how crazy it is. And the snow is all melted. It was all melted by about 9 o'clock in the morning, but it's still cold outside. Like 2 nights ago, I was sitting outside in short sleeves smoking a cigar. And tonight, I've got to like bundle up. I got to put on a scarf. It just, and it just it sent me into this like spiral today of just feeling overwhelmed by just all of the weirdness in the world, just utterly, just broken a little bit. I have to admit. We've got this whole thing that's going on with Russia and the Ukraine and the United States, and just it's whatever's going on there. I don't know. It just seems to me like Vladimir Putin is this guy who just like is nostalgic for the Cold War, and I think he's like I said this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I really think he's one of these guys that proves that like nostalgia is a dangerous thing. We tend to see the world through rose-tinted glasses, but very few of us actually have the power to make it happen, right? To make the world go back to the way that it was when we were young and exciting. And of course, when Vladimir Putin was young and everything was exciting to him, he could murder people and with impunity. He wouldn't have to pay for it. So that's the world he wants to go back to now, and we're all kind of wrapped up in the middle of that. Okay, and it just feels like right now that in the past 3 years, we can just never get ahead as a human race. First it was like COVID, this thing that now is like we're at the 2-year anniversary of COVID, right? Two years ago, I believe it was this week. My school closed down. We abandoned the place like it was Chernobyl, and we all just came home for the next like 6 months. And that's where we were 2 years ago. And, very recently, it seemed to everybody like we had kind of broken the fever a little bit, that COVID is receding. There's no longer footage on the evening news of like mass graves being dug in New York City and people just being thrown in there and like renting out Burger King refrigerated trucks to like store bodies in and all that. Like that seems to like we seem to be getting away from that. That's like done. We're taking off our masks in public and all that. And it just seems like we're moving on. And then this thing with Russia happens. What they're literally saying could very well be going down in the history books as the 1939 of the 21st century, right? The time just before the calm, just before the storm, and it's not really even that calm. Okay. But yeah, first it was COVID, and now it's war, and we just seem to be right back where we started in terms of just the world locking down and being ultra paranoid. And, primarily the worst hit that Americans feel, of course, is because of gas. Gas just seems to be, I really do think that the whole thing with gas prices, right? Because we put this embargo on Russian oil. So now I guess we're having to rely on oil from other parts of the world that aren't tied to Vladimir Putin. And, gas here in Alabama has never broken $3.90. And right now it's the average gas price in Alabama, where I live, is like $4.39. I went to the gas station today. I was just going to put like $10 in it because I was conditioned that $10 could actually get you through a few days. Now $10 will, that's a little over 2 gallons. No, that's less than 2 gallons of gas. It's just a nightmare. Yeah, gas prices are this next thing that's going to keep us inside. I mean, just like COVID did initially. Gas prices are going to keep us at home. We had a half day at school this week, and I had several students who Now, of course, yeah, if they're students, they don't want to come to school. That's kind of their ultimate priority in life, is just to come to school as little as possible. But nevertheless, they said we would come to school, but gas prices are too much. We can't come in. If it's only a half day, and like we're probably not going to be doing anything anyway. And I kind of was like, okay, I sort of understand that, actually. Yeah, call me a lenient teacher if you wish, but I'm at the point where if there's some place that I don't have to absolutely go, I'm not going to go there. And of course, this is a big problem again because layering our proclivity to stay inside because of rising gas prices and not being able to afford just like simply going places that we want to go, but going places that we absolutely have to go, like work and things like that. It's further conditioning us to repress that desire that we have as a species to be itinerant. Okay. Like, we as humans are not supposed to be stationary. We're not supposed to spend all day in our houses. We're supposed to get out. We're supposed to go places. And for most of us, that means that we have to drive. Okay. Like where I live, fortunately, I live in the city, so you can actually get out and walk on sidewalks. But, for most people who live in like a rural state like mine, they have to have a car to get places. Okay. And, not only that, but, think about travel also, the way that this is, again, going to impact travel. Okay. I'm not just talking about like tourism dollars, the way it's going to impact the economy, but I'm talking about the way that, it's a human being's like natural desire to get out of their bubble and see the world and see how the other half lives. Okay. And if we don't do that, then we just stay home and kind of live in our own dumbness, in our own vacuums. We learn things through like television and the internet, and we never get outside of our comfort zones, and this hurts us as a species. So we're going on now more than 2 years of being essentially mandated to stay inside and only go places when we have to, right? And that's just a huge problem. We want to move around, yet we're at this weird time in history where we're being told that it's kind of impossible to do that. So that's really been bogging me down. That this week in the snow and the weather have really been frustrating my attempts at sanity. Right, we're all just people. We're all just trying to live our lives here. Just trying to like go to work and just enjoy being alive. And yet it just feels like the powerful people in the world, like the Putins and the Zelenskys and the Bidens and the Macrons and the Boris Johnsons of the world, they're all just like in this geopolitical pissing contest, and we're in the toilet. So, what can people like me do, people like me and you do when, we're just working, we're just guys, we're just people trying to get through our lives and with minimal drama, being able to make a little bit of money to go out there and learn and see the world for ourselves. I don't know. We have to, it's like I've been trying to fight my position of being like made to be a simpleton. You know, I just feel like there's like this big picture out there in the world of people, and they're all powerful, and they kind of work behind closed doors. It's very easy to buy into conspiracy theories. I try not to. I don't want to. I think I'm a very rational person. But in times like these, it's hard to believe that there are not like a bunch of guys in the back of a grocery store just making decisions for us, and smoking cigars and drinking whiskey and all that, and just, making these decisions without us. And, meanwhile, we're all sitting here playing tiddlywinks. So we do our best to fight this idea of being a simpleton and trying to be in the know. And I was thinking about this today. I was watching HBO just released this, this 2-part documentary on the controversy that happened last year with GameStop. If you remember that, this was this documentary called Gaming Wall Street, and essentially about all these retail investors. Retail investors are just small investors like you and me. We might have like $1,000 a year to throw at the stock market, and maybe we use like one of these free brokerage apps like Webull or Robinhood. We put it on there and we just buy a little bit of stock and hope that we see the stock rise and fall. We think we're getting like the latest up-to-date information, but of course it turns out that we're not. We're getting like third-rate information. Okay, we're all just I don't know. There's some crude terms, but there's like this one fraternity ritual. No, I won't say that. But like essentially we're all kind of standing around in a circle. No, I can't say that either. How can I say this in like a clean way? We're all just getting the screws put to us, okay? We're all just getting the screws put to us. And it's basically like the less money that you seem to have, the more screws that you have put to you, okay? And so for a lot of retail investors, they're at the very, very bottom tier of the stock market feeding chain. And at the very top are the apex predators, or like the hedge funds and the big Wall Street banks and things like that. And they all get the information first, and then we sort of get their spoils, okay? And or whatever's left over. And so the idea with this like Gaming Wall Street documentary, what it says is like there are all these guys who were essentially buying huge amounts of shares and just pooling together like all of their money, all of these small retail investors, to buy shares in GameStop and AMC theaters, so that the stock would go up and all of these hedge fund short sellers would lose all this money. And it was like the one of the first times in American history where basically all of these Davids went up against this one Goliath and actually won for a very short time. Because what happened is that when the funds started to get wise, they prevented retail investors from continuing to buy shares in GameStop and AMC Theater and these other small companies that were, or these other big companies that were heading toward crashes. And so this was like hardcore evidence. Like we actually now have it on paper that there are forces conspiring against the little guy. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why it was such a controversy. I remember this whole thing happening last year. I just don't really remember what the specifics of it were. And so, this kind of put it into perspective for me. Okay. So yeah, we're all just kind of trying to just live our lives and get by. And again, if there's anything that we've learned from the last 2 years, it's the fact that like the people at the top of the ladder, the apex predators, are not even hiding it anymore that they're hunting us, right? They're basically, it's like we're in the middle of a gigantic open field, and so are they. They see us, and then they throw a bunch of glue at us, and we just stay in place while we get gobbled up. I don't know. I'm so sorry that I'm really seem to be pissed off tonight. I'm just in a weird mood today. Well, you're like, oh man, Mike Booty, that Midnight Citizen. He's getting hard edged. He's like George Carlin in the '90s or Lenny Bruce. No, I'm not like that, but anyway. But yeah, I've been just trying to kind of keep my mind active lately, not fall into this like sense of just letting the world wash over me. I feel like that's what I did for like the first 30 years of my life, and while I still very much value being, I guess what I would call a practicing non-participant. I really don't participate in almost anything that that everybody else seems to find so enjoyable. It's a lot of times I just get I'm always very suspicious of like the latest trends and things like that, and I feel like there are a lot more people like me out there than there are. I guess we're a silent majority, I suppose. But I just always try to be a little suspicious of everything, but I think there is still a way to be in the know and just not be, you can be suspicious and skeptical, but don't just be passive. So I don't know. Yeah, you got to do things to keep your mind up. And one of the things that I've always done that's like exercised my mind and just made me sharp is I've been reading. So lately I've really been wanting to kind of read challenging stuff, and how else, like what else is more challenging out there than Thomas Pynchon? Thomas Pynchon. I've been reading Bleeding Edge. Yeah. Yeah, if you don't know who Thomas Pynchon is, he's like this notoriously, reclusive author who's been writing books since like the early 1960s. And as far as we know, he's still alive. I believe he's still alive. But I think it would be news if he died. But yeah, the reason we don't know this is because nobody's ever really seen him. There hasn't been never been any interviews with him. There's never been any footage of him that we know of. Like he may be in like a baseball game or something like that, and the camera may be like panning through the stands, but we mostly have really no idea what he looks like. Because he's just very standoffish. He prefers to write his books and publish them. And of course, it's led to like a lot of theories that Thomas Pynchon is not a real person, that it's actually like a bunch of different authors writing under his name, kind of like, the people who wrote the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew. Hardy Boys was always published under Franklin W. Dixon, who by my count should be about 120 years old by now. But I wonder if Thomas Pynchon ever wrote any Hardy Boys books. I don't know. But anyway. Yeah, but there's like two photos that exist of Thomas Pynchon, and they're both from like the 1950s. Like that's the most famous one. It's like a yearbook photo or something from when he was in high school or college, and he's got like this, hair that looks like, I don't know, like an interstate on-ramp, and he's got these giant buck teeth, and he doesn't really look. I wouldn't say that he looks like a little rascal. Because he's like a little too old for that. But he looks like, I don't know, maybe like the Eddie Haskell type. The rambunctious teenager who might like buy beer for the Little Rascals, maybe. I don't know. I know that I'm like mixing up my pop culture metaphors, but yeah, there he is, Thomas Pynchon. So Thomas Pynchon, of course, his most famous novel is probably Gravity's Rainbow that he wrote in 1974, which is like a notoriously difficult novel. And I've started it several times. I think let me see where the bookmark is in this book. So, yeah, Gravity's Rainbow right here. I'm on page 313. I've been there for about the last 6 years. Gravity's Rainbow. And look at this. I actually found some old podcast notes in here from years ago. Look at that. Yeah. So, yeah, Gravity's Rainbow is like his most famous work, and deals with a lot of the themes that he's always explored in his books, going all the way up until his most recent novel, Bleeding Edge, which was published in 2013. And that's the one that I'm reading right now. But Thomas Pynchon is like, I guess what you would classify as a postmodern author. You know, he's very much interested in the relationship of science and technology to like the will of the human spirit in the years following World War II. And there's a lot of like the way that like the human body is kind of linked to the military industrial complex. I don't know. The best way I can kind of explain that is that the beginning premise of Gravity's Rainbow, like Gravity's Rainbow has like a lot of premise, I don't know. But the main idea though is that there's this character in the book named Tyrone Slothrop, who is in London during World War II, you know, like when London is getting pummeled by V2 bombs all the time, being launched, thrown to them from Germany. And essentially every time this character, Tyrone Slothrop, has like an orgasm, it actually corresponds to a place on the map where a V2 rocket has fallen. So there's this like weird relationship that he explores between, you know, the functions of the human body and the functions of war and, you know, people who make weapons and things like that. So it's hard to explain, but everything with Thomas Pynchon is hard to explain. I'm not even sure he can explain it. He's notoriously difficult, although some of his books are easier to read than others. And I think especially in like the 21st century, you know, he's written, I believe, 3 books in the 21st century that are all actually pretty enjoyable and easy to understand. Against the Day came out in 2006, which is I believe it's his longest novel, about 1,100 pages. But I was able to finish it, so it must not be that complicated. And then he followed that up with Inherent Vice in 2009, which, of course, they made the film out of by Paul Thomas Anderson, which is about a detective in like the 1970s. And then, of course, Bleeding Edge, which is also about essentially like a detective in the year 2000, right after the .com bubble burst and 9/11, and between 9/11 before. So I've held off on reading Bleeding Edge for the longest time because I just, as somebody who did live through 9/11, I just, you know, and apparently from reading the book jacket, a lot of the book has to do with 9/11. Even though I know as a Thomas Pynchon reader, and I feel like I'm kind of a seasoned Pynchon reader by now, having read several of his books to completion, I know that whatever it says on the dust jacket is not what the book is about at all. So they're very misleading summaries. But, you know, nevertheless, having lived through 9/11, I just, I really try to, I don't want anything to really do with it. It's just, I grew up, you know, I was in college when that happened. For like a year, all I did was like watch the news, and I saw footage of the towers falling over and over again. And I did not want to see it. And I became very weary and tired of the conspiracy theories that surrounded 9/11. I knew something was going on with it, but I didn't really want to indulge. It seems like there was no like happy medium with 9/11. Either you just kind of, you know, in the public space, you either went with the simplest explanation that Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda had a bunch of people come over here and fly planes into buildings, right? Or you were on the other side, which is like it was a giant government cover-up. It was an inside job. And there was no like happy medium just to explore kind of what really happened. And so I just got incredibly burnt out on that in the 10 years or so after 9/11. So Bleeding Edge comes out in 2013. I really don't want anything to do with it. But, you know, I don't know, just in the current state that we're in, you know, for like the last 2 years, I just, I really wanted to read something that was like attempting to make sense of the weird, complicated world that we live in, and I wanted Thomas Pynchon to kind of explain it to me. And so I started reading Bleeding Edge, and I've been enjoying it so far. You know, I'm not really going to give a summary here because I'm only like 150 pages into it, but you know, but it's a good book though. It's got, you know, if you're a Pynchon reader and you've never read Bleeding Edge before, it's incredibly accessible. It's like Inherent Vice. It's really, the plot is pretty easy to follow, more or less. It's got a lot of weird, digressions in it, the way that you would expect from Pynchon. Some of the things that he's like most famous for are alive and well in the book. Like he's got, you know, there's always these weird acronyms that organizations use, like things like in his first novel, The Crying of Lot 49. There's this organization called WASTE, WASTE. And it stands for We Await Silent Terrestro's Empire. So that's a book about, you know, conspiracies in like the 1960s in California. And, you know, there's always characters in his books chasing around conspiracy theories, kind of finding weird, dark underground worlds and organizations. And Bleeding Edge has like a lot of them. There's the central character, this woman named Maxine Turnow, is like a fraud investigator. Which very much like Doc Sportello in Inherent Vice. You know, he's a guy she's a lady who's like going around New York City in the late 90s, trying to figure out the darker purposes of like this .com billionaire's company. And so he's like the only person who's managed to actually keep his company afloat among a lot of busts. So she's like, what's up with that? And so she meets a lot of different weird characters and weird organizations. There's this one organization called Despair, DESPAIR, which stands for, you know, Disgruntled Employer Simulation Program for Audit, Information, and Review. And it's all about, you know, these people who are, it's like this organization of just disgruntled employees. So, you know, kind of like the anti-work people on Reddit, you know. And again, strange organizations. There's this whole chapter that talks about Ambopedia, which isn't an acronym, but it you know, it's this yearly conference of people who get together on a cruise ship, and they all have borderline personality disorder. You know? And they sail to the middle of the ocean and literally go, you know, between they park the cruise ship on the borders between countries. They listen to Madonna's Borderline and they talk about their problems. So, you know, and it's like, that's Pynchon for you. It's like, you know, there's a whole lot of weirdness that's organized around very humorous ideas. And you can almost buy the fact that they actually take place. They actually do exist in the real world. And very often, Thomas Pynchon does mix in fake organizations with real ones, right? Like he'll mention WASTE and the CIA in the same sentence, and you know, you have to figure out which one sounds more legitimate. So, you know. So I've been reading, Bleeding Edge this week, right? You know, and I think like one of the reasons that I love to read Pynchon when I'm just feeling stressed out about the world, again, is because, you know, we do have this tendency when we just feel like we're trying to get by in this world and there's people out there, like forces that seem to be conspiring against us. Like not you individually, but just people like you, all the millions of people like you who are just trying to wake up in the morning and like go to work and pay taxes, you know, and just live their lives and travel occasionally. Okay. And yeah, like it's so easy sometimes to fall into this trap of just being a conspiracy theorist and just really looking for darker purposes and trying to explain them. And I think one of the things that Pynchon is so good at is he's good at identifying the fact that, you know, conspiracies their theories are like a self-fulfilling prophecy of just, you know, us. We can't explain like the dark side of things, and we just end up theorizing over what the dark side is, and sometimes we end up actually making that happen, if that makes any sense at all, you know. But yeah, like reading Pynchon will just kind of give you this idea. There's like definitely a backlash that you get when you try to keep your mind awake And, you try to just make sense of the world by doing research. And essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to defeat the Dunning-Kruger curve, And this has been talked about a lot. The Dunning-Kruger, effect is essentially, this idea that the more you know, the more you just know that you don't know, right? It's very easy to just see two things, put them together, and assume that it's a conspiracy, okay? And at the very, very low end of this is the valley of despair. This is when you actually open up a book or you take a trip and, you just have the sudden drop that things that you always thought about were wrong. It's like that episode of King of the Hill where Dale Gribble, the conspiracy theorist next door, actually takes a trip down to Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas, and he finds out that he was wrong about the Kennedy assassination. And so he falls into this valley of despair. He's like, everything I've thought about this whole time is wrong. And so, we have that when we try to actually research and try to have this war against just taking what's given to us, taking the information that's given to us and just being totally happy about it. We do fall into this valley of despair, and we have to, that's the backlash, and we have to kind of pull ourselves out of it, right? Just get ourselves out of it. So. And you can always tell when people are in this valley of despair. Okay? These are the people, when you're in conversation with them, they're not talking over you. They're listening. Sometimes they've even got their heads in their hands. Just once you start, seeing what's out there, what's out there and how complicated the world is, you do start listening better. You're more aware. And just accept that and just try to maintain your sense of humor, I guess. I don't know.
On your breath, big rimmed glasses and your makeup's a mess. Always walking around in that thrift shop dress. Bent so low, got those tattoos on your chest. Tell me a hipster's love is the best. You're scaring me, baby, you're just too obsessed. Ahead of her time, only in her mind. Don't tell me
And welcome back to the show. Hope you enjoyed that little musical interlude there. That was a long time to be talking just now. Thought I was just trying to get back to basics here. That was a lot, man. Yeah, welcome back into the studio. Yeah, the music break just now. We had some good music there. We started off with a song called Hipster Girls by the Spinwires, which is all about this guy who doesn't date hipster girls, but he seems to be attracted to them anyway. As we all are. And then a nice instrumental number. Kind of 60s, 70s jazz stuff called That's a Beat by the band Ketsa. And you can find both of those songs on the Free Music Archive, courtesy of WFMU out of New Jersey. And I'm actually doing something new this week. I seem to be doing new things every single week. But this week, I'm actually making the entire mix of this episode of the Midnight Citizen available on my playlist over at the Free Music Archive. I just actually discovered that you can make mixes and playlists over there and share them with people. So I am going to share that with you, not just the 2 songs from the musical break just now, but also all the backing music. You could go there and hear the amazing free music on the show without the interruptions of my voice. Yeah, I want to remind you that you can go find the show. Check me out if you don't know at mikebooty.com/The Midnight Citizen. That's my website. You can also find a complete live stream of the show, actual video of the show, of me doing the show, if that's your thing, over at youtube.com/mikebooty. And yeah, you'll actually have the benefit of, during the musical breaks, seeing the segment of the show that I introduced a couple of weeks back called Nightcam. Yeah, like every time I kind of cut away and take a break, I will show you a place, a random place on the globe as it is happening right now. And that's what Nightcam is. This week, I took you to Leavenworth, Washington. Nice little wintry town there in Washington State. Right in the foothills of the mountains. Very nice little wintry scene there. People walking around. Little piggies living their piggy lives. Oh, look at that. Walking dogs. Sitting and chilling next to fire pits. Gotta be cold there. So yeah, that is Nightcam. Because we're all on this earth together. We might as well share it on the Midnight Citizen Show. I want to talk for a second this week, tonight, about a movie I saw this week. I haven't seen it in a while. You know how just like sometimes you'll just kind of be like, I don't know, taking a shower or driving down the road, and just like you'll think of a movie that you just like hasn't been anywhere in your memory. At least not in the front of it. It's been lurking somewhere in the subconscious hindbrain, just waiting to come out. Something just reminds you of it. And this week I thought about this movie called To Live and Die in L.A. All right. This movie from 1985, directed by William Friedkin. The director of The French Connection, which is probably in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. Love that movie. He also directed The Exorcist and Sorcerer. And kind of had a reputation in the 1970s for just being like a wild man director. One of these guys who just like sacrifices relationships and safety in order to get that perfect shot, right? I think like most notoriously on The Exorcist, he actually crippled Ellen Burstyn when she did a stunt in the room there of Reagan when she was possessed by the devil. So yeah, he's always had this reputation, and I think it's because of the movie Sorcerer, a movie that went wildly over budget and failed at the box office. Of course, not because it wasn't a good movie. I think it's a great movie, but because it opened the week after Star Wars in 1977. Pretty much tanked his career. So he finds himself in the 1980s unable to get any kind of studio to finance a film of his anywhere on the globe except in Los Angeles. So, he finds this book called To Live and Die in L.A., which is about, it's the main character is like a Secret Service agent, played by William Peterson, who's on the hunt for this murderous counterfeiter, played by Willem Dafoe, and it's just a fantastic film, and really the way that I would like describe it to anyone is probably like it's like if you took The French Connection and Repo Man and like put them into a blender. That's kind of what you would get. Maybe with like a little bit of In the Line of Fire, because of the Secret Service angle. But, So, and I think specifically I say Repo Man because it's shot by Robbie Mueller, who also was the director of photography for Repo Man. And pretty much any movie worth watching that's set in Los Angeles, California. But yeah, this is just one incredible movie. It's just, to me, like one of these films, it's like on another level. Just in terms of like how gritty it is, how cynical it is, how like beautifully shot it is. There's a car chase that's like in the center of it, kind of the same way there was in The French Connection. And, it's just like the way car chases should be shot, Like there's always like that every, I think, action director always wants to do that one great car chase. And obviously there's a lot of movies that center around car chases. Like those Fast and the Furious movies. There was that movie Baby Driver that came out a few years ago that's got a lot of car chases in it. But I think like just one thing that drives me crazy about like those movies is that they're so flashy and stylized and they make it look fun. And I think the thing about the way that To Live and Die in L.A., the car chase in that film is that it doesn't look fun at all. It looks like nauseating, but it's also like super. It's also like super interesting to just like see the way that cars would actually behave in a chase, not stylized and not doing like these balletic dances around like semi trucks and things like that. Like there's dirt that's going up all over the place. There's like, rims that are blowing out. There's like windshields that are cracking. There's a guy in the movie in To Live and Die in L.A. who just like gets totally nauseous sitting in the back seat there as his partner is driving over these like railroad tracks. And you could just see like the dread on his face, that this could lead to his death and he's sick about it. Right. But absolutely fantastic movie. And I came home and I wanted to like find it. I wanted to watch it. But this is one of those movies you cannot find anywhere. Because apparently it was a big flop when it came out. But since then it's been like a huge cult film. You can go on YouTube. There's like all of these people reviewing the movie. But you cannot find it anywhere to watch online. Like we've been conditioned now. You should be able to stream these films, right? Where are they? Well, you can't find them. Not on any streaming service. And you can go onto eBay and you can get a copy from the Shout Factory, a copy that like went out of print a few years ago. You can get that for like $150. I mean, you can still get the movie, but it's just a lot of money. It's a lot of dough that I can't shell out right now for a film. But I will say, there are ways to watch it online. Just look it up in your typical way that you want to watch a movie and you don't want to pay for it. Yeah, there's like a lot of inappropriate ads that come in. And, I was watching it last night. My wife walked in at some point, because my brother-in-law called and he wanted to talk to me. And, I went to pause the movie. And, of course, about a million different naked anime characters popped up. So, I had to pause the film, talk to my brother-in-law, and then I had to explain to my wife that that's not why the door was closed. Okay. But yeah, absolutely fantastic movie. To Live and Die in L.A. Check it out. Yeah, another thing about that film, by the way, is that another thing that makes it great. It's got a complete soundtrack composed and performed by Wang Chung, the British new wave band. And it's fantastic. It's just absolutely like you could go on, you could stream that thing on Spotify. And I highly encourage you do. Like, I've been driving around delivering food this week in my car, like listening to the soundtrack to Live and Die in LA, and it has like the certain feeling that it really does make you feel like you're driving around, you're a character in that movie, even though, you know, you're driving around Birmingham, Alabama, delivering you know, sushi to people. But it's just a perfectly immersive soundtrack, you know. It makes you think of the film when you listen to it. Yeah. And oddly enough, you know, like Dance Hall Days is not on that soundtrack, even though they play it in the movie at a strip club. One of the characters goes to a strip club, and a girl is dancing to Dance Hall Days. It's not in that, but yeah, Wang Chung. If you're not familiar, I think their most familiar, their most popular song is probably "Everybody Have Fun Tonight," which actually has the name of their band in it. You know, everybody have fun tonight. Everybody Wang Chung tonight. I was listening to that song. It came up on my Spotify this week in the mix for To Live and Die in L.A. That song is not in the movie. It would be weird if it was, but it's not in the movie. Yeah, that's one of those songs that just always seems a little creepy to me in a way. Like, everybody have fun tonight. Because I think it's just because of the weird low res tone that they sing that song in. They don't really sound like they're having a fun time when they're singing that song. You know, everybody have fun tonight. You know, they just don't really sound very excited. And so there seems to be like this ironic element at play. And I don't know if there's a music video for that song. You know, I'm not going to look it up here because I don't want to get struck with copyright or anything. But yeah, at one point there's this point near the end of that song where it's a mix of people saying everybody have, you know, everybody, and it's like everybody have, you know, and it's going over and over again. It sounds like there's just a bunch of people who are sort of trapped in like this vortex, maybe leading down to like hell or something. Just saying it in the most ironic way possible. And in the middle of all that, there's literally a guy who comes on, who in the background, it's very faint. You really have to listen for it, but it's at about like the 4-minute and 54-second mark of the song. He says, "Tell me what a Wang Chung is." Okay. And so I was like listening to that, and I was like, it was building up this image in my mind. You know how songs, you know, give you certain images. You have this image of this guy all of a sudden who's just like falling again through this like long vortex, this pit leading to a very dark place. And he's just like, somebody just tell me what a Wang Chung is. He just wants to know something, but he knows it has something to do with his fate. Tell me what a Wang Chung is. Tell me what a Wang Chung is. Anyway. Yeah, that song Dance Hall Days, though. Oh my God, I got the effects on. That song Dance Hall Days. All right. So talk about that for just a second. So, like, that's a song, I think, with one of the most misunderstood song lyrics of all time. And you probably know which one I'm talking about. It's a song. Once again, it's a very creepy song from Wang Chung about something that you're doing to your lady in the dance hall, right? Take your lady by the hills, right? Make her, you know, take a high handstand. I don't know. So, you know, there's it's got this idea that, like, you know, it's a guy who is like nostalgically looking back at the dance hall days, okay? And talking about just certain things that they used to do and how they used to have fun. I'll look up the lyrics. I'm terrible with lyrics, and I think this story kind of proves it. Yeah. So yeah, the lyrics are take your baby by the hand and make her do a high handstand. take your baby by the heel and do the next thing that you feel. So it's got this like kind of eerie vibe to it, where it's like you're doing things that like your baby has no control over. Yeah, but then it's talking about like things like we were so in phase in our dance hall days. We were cool on craze. Okay, so like the way that they sing this makes it sound like we were cool on Christ, right? I've always thought, and I feel like there are other people like me out there who think this is the same way, because I know I've talked to people about it before. Okay. Yeah, we were cool on Christ. And it's amazing how certain misunderstood song lyrics can make you have this completely different image of what the song is trying to evoke, this mental image that the song is trying to get you to think about. So like when I think about this song, Dance Hall Days, I sort of think about like just how the social aspect of being young, for me personally, was tied up in sort of going to church, right? So it's like you had crushes on these girls, but they were all like at church. And so like you were cool on Christ together, right? In the Dance Hall Days, right? In the double wide trailer behind the church where you used to have your big youth group meetings. I don't know. So yeah, it's always been just this weird thing about being cool on Christ, but I don't think that's what Wayne Chung is trying to get you to think about there. Not at all. So, yeah, here on the show. Yeah, just getting back to just how weird times have been lately and just this mental effect that it can have on you. I've been experiencing a lot lately of what I would call time displacement. I'm sure there's a term for this because it is kind of a phenomenon that I think does happen, not just to my brain. I don't think I'm special, but it's been happening a lot lately. Maybe you can tell me what it actually, like, what is the clinical term for this? Okay. So what time displacement is for me is when you like travel to different places in the town where you've lived all of your life. And you expect things to be there. And then when you go there, you suddenly realize that not only are they not there, but they haven't been in years. And you're kind of like, that's time displacement. Okay. It's like, in your mind that it's 2022, but when you go places, you expect them to be like 2002 or something like that. Maybe not that long ago. I don't know how far it goes back. But yeah, I've been experiencing a lot of time displacement lately, and I think this happens because I've been in my head so much, I've been just like thinking about the ramifications of living through the last 2 years. I've been reading Thomas Pynchon, working on my podcast, which has honestly taken like a lot of mental gymnastics to do that. Right. I just like, my brain is kind of overloaded because I'm so invested in this creative project called the Midnight Citizen Show. And I'm also working at the same time. So I have this tendency like to leave my body sometimes and just go completely into my mind. But I'm still going around places. So, I have this I have this real tendency to displace where I actually am in the timeline. You know, just thinking a lot about misunderstood song lyrics and all that. I don't know. Yeah, no, I'll give you an example, okay, to show you what I mean. So, last week, you know, I went to the Chevron, as I said earlier, down to the gas station on the corner. I really wanted an ice cream. It was actually kind of a hot day, and I remembered that the Chevron has a cooler there. You know, one of those like long coolers that you can reach in. You can get yourself like a Snickers ice cream bar or something like that. I just really wanted like some sugar, some cold sugar. And I went in there, and the cooler wasn't there. And I suddenly remembered, like, man, the last time I think I actually had anything out of that cooler was probably maybe 2016. So again, I went in there thinking that something was there, but it hadn't been in years because I hadn't had any reason or method to go in there and get that on a constant basis in probably about 5 or 6 years. So that right there, that's time displacement. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. Right? And you know, a couple days later, I'm taking the day off work, and I'm out and about. You know, I'm just kind of taking a day for myself, and I'm out and about, and I'm thinking, you know, I could really use a sandwich right now. And I'm going down the road, and I'm thinking, you know what place has really good sandwiches? There's this Jersey Mike's, and they sell Subway sandwiches. Okay. Really good down there right next to the cigar shop. And so I get in the car and I go all the way down 280. Like, you know, this is about a 30-minute drive in traffic to get to where I can have a sandwich. And the whole way, you know, down the interstate or down the highway, you know, I'm thinking about all these different things, you know, what I'm going to talk about on the show that week, Thomas Pynchon books, you know, the dance hall days, Cool on Christ. I'm totally in my head. And I also like, my mind starts to wander back to like the day where, you know, I used to have like, there was one Jewish kid that like went to my elementary school. And he used to like give me hell for being in the Boy Scouts. And, you know, when I graduated from Cub Scout to Boy Scout, I remember one time he called it a Protestant bar mitzvah. And so I'm thinking about that also. I'm not thinking about the actual task of getting a sandwich. I just know that that's kind of my destination. And so I get down there to Jersey Mike's and I find out it's no longer Jersey Mike's. And I knew that. It's been a Jewish delicatessen for something like, you know, like 9 or 10 years. I haven't been to that Jersey Mike's in years. Like that's time displacement. That's what I'm talking about. You know, it was just happening so much. So, you know, I get myself a latke. And a couple days later, I'm going to I need like a Band-Aid. So this is true. I need a Band-Aid. So you know, I'm going down to this drugstore down the street from my parents' house. And lo and behold, of course, it's not a drugstore anymore. It's a dollar store. And indeed, it hasn't been, I suddenly remember it hasn't been a drugstore in something like 15 years. And I feel like I'm going further back in time with my time displacement. But I get to this place, this dollar store, and I notice in the back of the store, there's like this little like series of like buttons. It's like a panel, like an elevator panel full of buttons. And next to the buttons are, you know, numbers that look like, you know, they're 4-digit numbers that look like they correspond to years. I notice on there is like 2004, 1999, 1997, 1995. And that's where they stop. And I realized that, 1995, if this is actually a year and I press this button and it does what I think it's going to do, it'll take me back to the very first year that I remember going into this drugstore when it was a Harco Drugs. And that's that's when my sister worked there. That was her first job, working at Harco Drugs. And so, I put on a glove that's in my pocket because I'm very hesitant to, touch buttons in these days of COVID. And put on the glove and I push the button and, lo and behold, like the entire world starts to transform around me and it becomes a drugstore. And I look around me, and sure enough, this has got to be 1995. There's like calendars on the wall and all that. That certain products are designed the way that I remember them being when I was a kid. And I walk around, and I'm suddenly just finding that I'm in. I'm not just like feeling time displaced. I'm actually time displaced. And I walk outside. And the world does not look like a world should, because that's the weird thing about time displacement is that you only remember, you can only actually manifest things the way that you remember them. So certain things are kind of not where they're supposed to be. But nevertheless, I do look down, and down the sidewalk is the movie gallery, and I go in there for a minute, and it's like exactly like I remember. I'm like, maybe I'll go in here and like rent a movie, like rent Cliffhanger or something like that. And maybe rent to Live and Die in LA, But you can't even find that movie in 1995 video stores. So I decide to leave the video store because I realize that I don't have a VCR at home. And even if I do have one at home, it probably isn't working anymore. But yeah, the weird thing is like when you step outside, just the entire world that you remember in 1995 is there. Not necessarily just in places where they should be. As a matter of fact, I went on vacation in the summer of 1995 to San Francisco, California. And, indeed, I looked out on the horizon and sure enough, I could see the peaks of the Golden Gate Bridge, just over the peaks of Oak Mountain. So it's like somehow I could actually, if I walked forward, I could actually walk across the entire country in just a few minutes. So, but I decided to maybe try that later. What I did decide to do, though, is I wanted to go and check out my old middle school because I was in middle school in 1995. And, of course, in reality, it would probably take me about an hour to walk along the busy highway to Oak Mountain Middle School from where I was, there at the movie gallery and the Harco drugstore. But the way, again, my memory is, every time I went to Oak Mountain Middle School in those days, I would be on the bus and I would be in my own world and not really paying attention to what was outside. So, the way that my memories were, they kind of fused the world together. And so it really only took me about 3 minutes to walk to Oak Mountain Middle School. I just walked past the things, the key destinations and the geographical points of interest. And so there I was, and I walked into Oak Mountain Middle School, and I was walking down the hall, and I was suddenly noticing that things were really kind of screwed up. It was sort of like like a scrambled channel. There were only little bits and pieces of Oak Mountain Middle School that were kind of put together, and it was really disconcerting and confusing. I was kind of getting a headache, and I just was really trying to make sense of the world. And then I started thinking about, other things that weren't necessarily related to the way that my world was in 1995. And suddenly things were starting to correct themselves very oddly. Okay. So the school did not look probably exactly as it was in 1995, but it looked the way that I remembered it. And I walked around, and there were, it was kind of like on the Photoshop, there's the clone stamp tool. It's like somebody just took a clone stamp and just was kind of making copies of like little bits and pieces that I actually remembered. And I was walking down the hall, and I heard a bunch of voices from one room. And I was walking down this empty hall, and it seemed to me like it was probably after school hours because the halls were relatively empty, as were the classrooms. But as I said, there was this one classroom, and voices were coming out of it. And they were young voices, and they were female voices. And I walked into this room, and I suddenly noticed that it was a room that was populated by all the girls that I had crushes on in middle school, right? And they were all just like hanging around and talking, and I couldn't really figure out what they were talking about. Their voices were just like kind of all blending together. But I looked on the board, and on the chalkboard, written in big capital letters, was the word scrunchy, right? And then under that were words written out, the first letters of which actually spelled out the word scrunchy. So, it was an acronym. And it turned out that scrunchy stood for Student Collaborative Rights, Undermining Neoconservative Hedonistic Yes Men. And suddenly, that's the moment where I was like, oh shit. My memories are actually melding with the current state of my discombobulated mind. Suddenly I've wandered into like a memory that's actually melted like cheese to a sandwich to a piece of toast with a Thomas Pynchon novel. So I'm in this conspiratorial group of girls that I had crushes on in middle school. And what they're doing is they're talking all about the hottest conspiracy theories of the day. And they're going around and talking, and they seem to be arguing right now about how the Oklahoma City bombing was like an orchestrated attempt by various federal agencies to mask gross incompetence at Ruby Ridge and Waco. And so they're all really angry about that. And I try to get a word in edgewise, and I kind of realize they're not really listening to me. Again, that's a memory that I have from middle school, is not, being paid the slightest mind by these girls. Right? But who does notice me is my Jewish friend, Job. Job, who's a guy who's like always having the screws put to him, comes up exactly the way that I remember him. The ironic thing is, though, I don't remember that I went to middle school with Job. I remember that he went, I believe, to another school that probably had more Jewish students there in middle school. But, he looked the way that I remember him looking in the 5th grade. So that was that. And he comes up and starts ragging me about my Cub Scout graduation ceremony, calling it a Protestant bar mitzvah. Ha ha ha. And we leave the room, and we're walking down the hall there. And there's a bunch of music that seems to be coming from the gym. And we walk down to the gym, and we suddenly just wander into what appears to be a dance. And everybody's kind of dancing around, but it seems to be segregated, not with like boys and girls and not black and white or anything. But they seem to be segregated based on everyone's understanding of like song lyrics. So like right now, the song Blinded by the Light is playing, the Bruce Springsteen version, and they're all dancing around. And on one end of the gym is the band that thinks that it's Rolled Up Like a Douche, Another Runner in the Night. And on the other end of the band, the dance floor is a bunch of people who are dancing to the lyrics, Rolled Up Like a Deuce, Another Runner in the Night, right? And the vibe of both sides is completely different, right? Yeah, so at that point, I just decided to get the hell out of there. Nostalgia is definitely not what I would say for the faint of heart. But there's always the idea of getting out of a stressful situation and going to that favorite place you know you can always go to, where you're always welcome and where everything is always in stock, the Video Street Video Store. Let's go there now, and I'll see you after.
Hello, everyone. By now, you pretty much have had to have heard that the summer's big movie is Batman Returns. In its first couple of weeks, it has already grossed more than $100 million at the box office, and it is already creating controversy. Some parents contend that Batman Returns, which is rated PG-13, is actually being marketed for younger children, and the movie is just too violent. Let's get an expert opinion on that from USA Today's junior movie critic, 10-year-old Danny Slasky. Please welcome Danny. So, Danny, what did you think of the movie?
It was very violent. It was a total attack against kids, the whole movie. Everything that kids love was being used against them.
Like what?
Clowns. Even the penguin had a ducky boat.
So
and
things that kids could identify
presents and mobiles. All that type of stuff were using to hurt kids and capture kids. Penguin's total goal was to hurt kids.
You think it was scary then?
Definitely for kids.
Yeah, for you?
I was actually a little bit scared, and I have never been scared of a movie like this before.
Yeah.
I came out of Terminator 2, fine.
Yeah. What do you think about the possibility of younger kids seeing this movie? You're 10, and it frightened you.
It's just not for younger kids. The Penguin always had goop coming out of his mouth. Catwoman took her claws and played tic-tac-toe on a man's face. It was just so violent for kids. And with all the McDonald's toys, it's making it sound like it is for kids, and it's not.
Yeah, actually, Danny, you bring up an appropriate point there, because I have had this lady hold these for me, thank you, because I wanted to show you that all the hysteria surrounding Batman has caused McDonald's to do a Happy Meal promotion, and you know, who's buying Happy Meals, 13-year-olds and over? And these are the toys that are on the market now, of course, the whole Batman series. So it is all geared toward younger kids. These toys are for 4 and up. Let's take a look now at the controversy that this has created. It's the most hyped movie of the summer season, Batman Returns. It's got a lot of violence and some sexual innuendos. So it's rated PG-13, a warning to parents that some material in the movie is not appropriate for children under 13. But some parents say the marketing for the movie is directly targeting kids who are much younger.
So how come you want to go see the movie?
Because I think it's interesting.
What about you?
I've seen a lot of commercials, and I think it's going to be a good movie.
Here you go. Catwoman.
Even before the movie came out, toy stores were stocking the shelves with Batman paraphernalia for kids 4 years old and up.
Once the movie broke, it really started flying off the shelves. As soon as we can put it on the shelves, the customers are taking it off.
Batman, there's something going on at McDonald's. Better check it out.
And a McDonald's promotion is clearly aimed at kids. Buy a Happy Meal, get a Bat toy, even if you're too young to actually see the movie. Some parents are exasperated.
I think it's not appropriate at all that they're doing this kind of tie-in for the kids. And when she drives by the movie, she says she wants to go see the movie, and when I tell her she can't see it, she bursts out into tears.
Joining us now are Barbara McLean and her 9-year-old daughter, Kara. About a half an hour into the Batman Returns movie, they walked out. And Brad Curl, who belongs to an organization that promotes family entertainment, Batman Returns did not get their seal of approval. Please welcome them. Barbara, obviously you had seen the commercials about Batman Returns and the ads. Did you have any idea what it was going to be like based on that?
I think that a lot of the reason that we went to see Batman Returns was based on a lot of the marketing issues. I'm usually quite vigilant about the movies that my children see. I do not let them see PG-13 movies if I haven't seen them first. I have a 12-year-old son. He has been after me for months to see Terminator 2, and he has not seen that. I'm usually very vigilant about that, but I do think that the marketing confused us a little, and a lot of the reason that we went to see it was based on what my memories of Batman were from when I was a child.
The TV series.
Actually, even probably before that, and that would be the whole series of comic books, which were very, very defined, good versus evil. It was not real violence, rather inferred violence, and it was justice and morality and a lot of other issues that I think are missing from many of the films that we see today.
Certainly from Batman Returns,
Certainly
in your
from
view.
Batman.
All right, Kara, why did you want to see the movie?
Well, I thought that it would be different than it actually was, and I didn't think it would have as much violence as it did.
Yeah, what did you think of it? You saw about 30 minutes of it before you left.
I didn't like it.
No, did it scare you?
Yes.
Yeah, you thought it was violent?
Yes.
Yeah, did you have bad dreams afterward or not?
No.
No, but it wasn't, you didn't want to stick around to the end, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah, Barbara, what happened 30 minutes in that made you leave?
Well, I think actually in the beginning of the film, there were some issues that I found were very confounding in terms of looking at what I believe to be very important, and that is just general human suffering. The parents have a child who has a defect, which was not something that we ever saw in the comics. They threw him off a bridge into a sewer. He's a baby. He grows up to be the Penguin. Catwoman is a woman who gets thrown out of a 20-story building because she speaks her mind to her boss. She's abused. And the issues of good and evil were very confusing and very confounding to the children, because here was this woman who had been abused, who then comes back and could have been a good person and helping people, and she didn't do that. So I found that the lines were very gray between good and evil.
What's right and what's wrong. Danny, did you see younger kids in the theater when you went to see it? How many times have you seen it?
I saw it twice to get a real good view of it. And the second time I saw it...
It's his job, no snickering. He had to see it twice, right?
The second time I saw it, when I saw the younger kids, I really wanted to tell them not to see this. It's really scary.
Yeah.
It's a really scary movie.
Brad, what's your biggest complaint with the movie?
Well, my biggest complaint is that we have a classic illustration here of kind of the Hollywood and the corporate community being out of touch with the family and out of touch with kids. I mean, McDonald's has apologized to us. They're embarrassed really now that they've thought it through. We need a corporate America that's thinking through the impact they're having on our young people. Our kids need hope. They need real heroes. They need a bright future, not these dark. And the film was full of little dirty, really raunchy little dirty jokes and lots of extreme violence. What has that got to do with inviting 6- and 8-year-old kids to the movies?
All right. We did invite McDonald's and Warner Brothers and Kenner, which makes the toys on today. They all declined to appear. They did give us a couple of statements. Let's look at the McDonald's quickly. McDonald's says, I'm paraphrasing here, they wanted to give young people a chance to experience the fun and excitement of Batman. They go on to say, we recognize our responsibility to our customers, and it was certainly not our intent to confuse parents or disappoint children. We're committed to maintaining their trust in McDonald's and sincerely regret any confusion. Warner Brothers says the movie is rated PG-13. It's up to the parents to take the responsibility of taking their kids to see the movie. And Kenner Products says kids can act out the fun of Batman in a manner that is wholly appropriate for their age group, and that's why they're making the toys. What do you think of those statements, Brad?
Well, I think it's, you know, a little bit of a cop-out. I don't think they're going to do this again. I think McDonald's will think through better next time the kinds of movies they sponsor.
Who do you think is really to blame? Is it the makers of the movie, or is it the people who end up marketing it?
We've talked with a lot of the executives in Hollywood who are in charge of distribution, et cetera, and a couple of them have told us, frankly, we're embarrassed by 90% of the stuff that we distribute to kids. We don't want our own kids to see it. 70-80% of the movies made in recent years are R-rated, and yet they're called horny boy movies, many of them. They're specifically made for teenage boys to take their girlfriends to. So it's a con job out there on our kids. They're not really caring about the welfare of our children.
All right, let me get to a commercial break, and we'll come back and continue to talk about Batman Returns.
That little wiener kid is talking about how the makers of Batman Returns really weaponize kids that things things that kids find friendly against them. Like how Penguin has a ducky boat. And he's got mobiles and... Either that's one fairly smart kid who's really sure in his opinions, or I feel like he's being fed a line there by his parents, or I'm not trying to be conspiratorial or anything. Whatever. Yeah. And as for Kenner Toys, who says that kids can act out their own Batman fantasies in ways that they see as appropriate for their age group, All I got to say is I was 10 years old when Batman Returns came out, and I got a Batman and a Catwoman doll, and I'll tell you what I did there. I'll tell you what I did there. Oh, geez. Well, thank you so much for joining me here on the Midnight Citizen Show. This has been one kooky gonzo time together. I want to remind you again, I am on online at mikebooty.com/The Midnight Citizen. You can also find me at Midnight Citizen Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Citizen Midnight, Instagram at Mike Booty. I'm all over the place and in different identities as well. So if you ever get confused, just, the best place to find me is on mikebooty.com/The Midnight Citizen. You can listen to me on Stitcher, Apple Podcast, Spotify. I'm all over the place. Yeah. As well as on OnSug, the Overnightscape, ONSUG.com. We'll see you over there. Yeah. And until next time, keep your eyes open.